Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Not just Dungeons and Dragons, but honestly, what is going on with your game? What is going on with the franchise? What is going on with the whole concept of a game that you play at a table with other people? And there are some really major things going on, and they have been going on for some time. You just might not have been aware. Some huge things are coming, and I would guarantee that you are going to see something so major happen with Dungeons and Dragons that you would never have guessed it would happen. And one of those things that it's probably going to happen, I would say in about 2 years, you'll see a major explosion. Now you've seen certainly an increase in the number of people playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but I think you will see an explosion occur, and this is probably because of a lot of different reasons. One has definitely got to be with the live streaming of Dungeons and Dragons games online. It's taken it from the basement and the hideaway where nobody could ever see it taking place to a location where it is now visible on YouTube and Twitch TV and a whole lot of other places if you want to go and check it out. But part of that is definitely going to be some future drama. And which is why I've selected this picture. Dungeons and Dragons, there's going to be some drama taking place, and part of that is going to be, there is definitely going to be a new version of Dungeons and Dragons, the roleplay game. And it's going to look a little different to what you're used to. I would imagine it'll still retain a lot of the aspects that you have enjoyed in the past, but it will be catered to a different population, and it will also be trying to pick up a broader population. So Dungeons and Dragons 6th edition will mean mainstream popularity, and mainstream popularity means picking up those who are interested in playing the game but at a much younger age. So in the past we'd say 12 years plus and then people are playing the game, but what they're looking at trying to do, and what is probably going to take place, is we're going to see the game being played by people who are 5 years plus, possibly even 4 plus, but I would definitely say 5 plus. That means major investment. Now, what you're thinking is, well, what the heck is Wizards of the Coast doing? Well, Wizards of the Coast runs Dungeons and Dragons. They run Magic the Gathering, but they aren't necessarily the only driving force here. What does Hasbro want? Now, Hasbro wants a new franchise, and that's definitely going to happen whether you like it or not. Hasbro has been looking at a way of turning what it has now into something much larger, because Hasbro knows that they have something good, they just don't know how to market it so that people are going to be happy with the result. And they shelf their franchises for years before they build up a long-term plan for its release and eventual success, financially and in terms of those people who are interested in it. So their plans is major franchise, multiple products. We've been seeing multiple products popping out for quite some time now. We're probably going to see a broad range of age groups, as I said, starting very young. That means new merchandising and toys. We've already seen some of that taking place. A simple Dungeons and Dragons roleplay game. If it's going to be played by somebody who's 5 or 4 plus, it needs to be simple enough but still retain enough of the original game that you can play it. Also too, when they said that they were going to release Dungeons and Dragons Next or Dungeons and Dragons 5e, they said that you could play it at different levels. You know, that it would be a very simple machine, and you could bolt on additional rules and complexity if you wanted. We didn't really get that with Dungeons and Dragons 5e. You can do that, but they didn't really give us that kind of game. What they gave us was a relatively simpler game than it used to be, but you could strap on a couple of variant rules, and there weren't that many. They didn't really give us what they said they would deliver, okay? And I feel that they will probably try to deliver what's coming up is they're definitely going to try to deliver the next time round. And I would say we're going to see a release of Dungeons & Dragons 6th Ed edition probably in about 2 years, possibly one, it just depends. We're going to see an educational basis because they'll be aware that trying to bring in a younger age group, we need to appeal to getting their maths and their English skills or their speaking and reading and writing skills up to par. So what sort of products can we expect? Well, you've probably already seen a whole bunch of products popping out already. And you can be guaranteed in about 2 years, they've been talking about doing a Dungeons & Dragons movie. There's going to be a Dungeons & Dragons movie. Oh my gosh, okay, we remember that. That was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it? It wasn't a fantastic movie. It wasn't a absolutely terrible movie, but it was one person's view of what Dungeons & Dragons was going to be. And it upset a few people. Some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. But as a general rule, when you look at it, it wasn't a very big budget, so the special effects weren't very good. The story was quite weak, and essentially the acting, even though they had some really good actors in it, their acting was terrible. I can only say it's probably the direction. So it's probably not that's probably not what we're going to get. We're not going to get that. What we're more likely to get from Hasbro is this. For those of you who are aware of the franchise, the Transformers, it's been doing very well, and they keep rattling out more movies because it has done so well. Now, Michael Bay is certainly behind that, and so is Spielberg, and I would imagine that we're going to see somebody who's at that caliber trying to make a Dungeons & Dragons movie, and they'll try to make sure it's going to cover a lot of bases, a lot of age groups. Whether you like that or not, I do not know, but that's what I certainly know. We know that movie is coming, okay? It's definitely on its way. And for those of you who may have forgotten, if the movie works out, you can be guaranteed there'll be a TV series. Now, for those of you who remember the original cartoon that came out for Dungeons & Dragons, it was it's actually still very, very popular by some adults and even kids. It has some good elements to it and some bad elements to it, but I would expect that if the movie works out well, we'll see a TV series as well, and probably a couple of years after the movie. And if that first movie works out, we're going to see additional movies. And I honestly think they'll get it right this time. That's my view anyway. I could be wrong. It's always possible. Action figures, if you're going to release a movie, Hasbro's going to be trying to sell action figures and toys. Clothing lines, as always, and appealing to a young audience and an older audience, for sure. Educational books. Now, I know what you're thinking and saying is like, no, that's not going to happen, but oh gosh, it is already happening. You're going to see educational books. Here it is. It's being released in October. Now, that's not very far away. And that's the 1, 2, 3s of D&D. So for those of you who were playing Dungeons & Dragons, had kids, really couldn't play Dungeons & Dragons anymore because you were too busy looking after your kids, they're going to release a series of books that appeal to a very young audience. And it's going to, even though it's not the role-play game, it's certainly going to have elements of Dungeons & Dragons in it. And for those of you who think that it's not going to happen, it is definitely happening. It's on its way. In a couple of months, you'll be able to buy these books from Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I actually think it's a really good idea, personally. Whether you disagree or agree, I still personally think it's actually a pretty good idea. But then I'm a teacher, so I'm all for that sort of thing. And for those of you who are thinking, no, well, there's a second book, okay, also at exactly the same time in the same month, and that's the ABCs of Dungeons & Dragons, appealing to a very young audience, helping them basically read through rhyme, and these are definitely going to happen. And before you think, oh no, these are not going to be successful, guaranteed they will work out perfectly fine. because there's a lot of people who used to play Dungeons and Dragons, would like to play Dungeons and Dragons, have kids, and they're waiting for them to get old enough so they can play Dungeons and Dragons with them. So they'll be buying these books for sure. And for those of you who feel like you might be left out completely, no, there's definitely going to be colouring books. There's a colouring book already coming out. Oh, hang on, it's already out. 21st of August, it's already out. Available to purchase, and you can colour in your favourite monsters and creatures. Now, this is just the first one, and it's supposed to be targeted at adults and children. But I would imagine that as time goes by, we're going to see a collection of these sorts of things that are tailored for a younger audience and an older audience. There's already colouring books for young kids and colouring books designed specifically for adults. So for those of you who thought, no, this is not possible, it's already happened. It's not going away. And of course, if anything is going to happen, we already saw an attempt to try and do a Lego brick type thing. But you're going to see Lego. If Dungeons and Dragons works as a movie, and I think honestly it will, we're going to see Lego. You've done well as a franchise when they start making Lego on a particular topic of any kind whatsoever. So you can probably enjoy many hours, if you have kids, standing on Lego bricks and Lego toys that are for Dungeons and Dragons, and then having to pick out the remnants from your toes and your foot as they pierce your skin. So that's certainly what I think is going to happen, is there's going to be a line of Lego bricks. Now, for those of you who already play the game, there's been a huge number of video games, an enormous number of video games released for Dungeons and Dragons with various success. But Neverwinter, the massive multiplayer online game, has been doing very nicely. It's not well, but it's been doing well enough that they keep producing content and people keep watching for new releases, new upgrades, and they play the game. And of course, because this is following the storylines that Dungeons and Dragons as a role-play game for the tabletop they're following those storylines, and they're releasing a storyline, 2 a year? That means that the release of stories and things that you can do is probably faster than the speed at which Blizzard's is releasing their stuff. Now, does that mean that Neverwinter is on the same par as WoW, World of Warcraft? Probably not. But it's releasing a lot of content is a driving force for anything being successful. Okay, so video games, and obviously they'll be releasing them for the Xbox and the PlayStation. One of the things I always loved was the fighting fantasy books that were released, and what do you know, Dungeons and Dragons is going to have their own line of pick a path or plot twisting adventure books, and the first of them are on their way. We're going to see the Endless Quest for I believe it is the Wizard. So you can play a wizard and you run through, and it's the same sort of thing. There'll be a dice involved to resolve conflicts or combat, and then you'll pick your path. You'll have some options and you select what you want, and then you'll turn to the section in the book that relates to the choice that you made. I think it's actually really, really smart, because this actually captured me when I was a teenager. So this is probably trying to capture the teenager who is heavily into reading and looking for something else, something different, trying to capitalize on the success of the Pick a Path books, which is still quite popular. And there's quite a range. We don't just have the Wizard. We have the Fighter is going to get his own release. This is all happening in September, the 4th of September of this year. These things are definitely happening. This is not me making up stuff. This is actually on the website. There's one for the Cleric, as it happens. And of course, we don't leave out the Rogue, because the Rogue is going to get their own own story as well. And they're all being released at exactly the same time. This is all very strategic. I'm sure we're going to see stuffed toys very shortly too. I think that's actually a given. If you appeal to an audience who is 5, which I'm sure they are working towards that, they already have. I've shown you a few products. We're going to see stuffed toys for sure. Absolutely. There's your little ones are going to have a beholder under their arm, or a unicorn, or some sort of fantasy creature that is supposed to protect them at night, or at least keep them company. All right, board games. They've been doing board games for years, but you can expect that to continue. There's already been a huge number of board games released, and they keep doing them. Every time there's a new storyline, they release another board game. Right now, Tomb of Annihilation has its own board game, even though I haven't got a picture of that up right now. So that'll continue. Comic books. It hasn't been quite so successful, the comic book phase of their releases. Certainly back in 2017 there were comic books, but if everything else works out, they'll do a comic book. I would imagine that more likely we're going to see not so much a Dungeons & Dragons official release, but Critical Role has been getting quite a lot of traction, and I think that their comic book will probably do a lot better, simply because there's so many people following it, and they can capture a lot of the audience that was interested in the live play stuff. So reading the comic books, and that'll probably be an audience that's in the 20 plus range, but I would imagine give it enough time and it'll pick up some of the teenagers as well. So everything to do with Dungeons and Dragons is going to probably at some point pop up. So if you can stamp D&D on it, it's going to happen. Now, I know what you're saying is, this is terrible. This is just, how could they possibly be doing this? But I have a point to make, and I'm getting to it. Magic the Gathering is going to get integrated into Dungeons and Dragons. It is probably the spearhead. It's the major money producer for Wizards of the Coast. Hasbro knows this. It is still, Magic the Gathering is still tiny in comparison to what Hasbro makes, but they know that if they can bring that and bring it all together into one, that they can streamline the team at Wizards of the Coast in terms of who's producing Magic and who's producing Dungeons and Dragons. And I would imagine there's going to be a merging of the art team in particular. Maybe not everything else, but certainly there'll be some sort of merging and integration taking place. And we already know that's going to happen because it has already happened. We're going to have a release. There's going to be the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica release for Dungeons and Dragons, bringing the world of Magic the Gathering into Dungeons and Dragons. And it's just the start. There's going to be more. Absolutely guaranteed you'll see more of it. Now, for those of you who are thinking, oh my God, what are they thinking? All of this is going to happen quite slowly. It's going to take the next couple of years for all of this to actually happen. It's not going to all happen all at once at one time. It's all going to be drip fed. They've been doing it for years, but they're working towards it. And it's been done before, okay? The movie will be the signal for a new era, but as it happens, TSR at some point decided that they had a franchise that they could make a lot of money on, and they had warehouses absolutely full of merchandise that had Dungeons and Dragons and their logo printed on it. And they didn't sell it because, of course, their particular period in time was the time in which there was a lot of controversy, and they didn't have the benefit of the internet, and there were a lot of other things out there that were going on. So that was part of the problem. So TSR has already tried to heavily merchandise Dungeons and Dragons years and years ago. So if you start thinking, well, Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast are terrible, well, TSR had a go at it many years ago, were unsuccessful. I believe that Hasbro will get it right this time, and they will probably be more than successful. Okay, so I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say, and so I'm going to flick it over to my little screen here. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I think it's not going to change the fact it's going to happen. But if you found this interesting or useful, please share and like the video. If you haven't already subscribed and you feel like subscribing and seeing more content from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I do new videos. If you want to support me, watching more of my videos will continue to support me, and I really do appreciate it. I don't do Patreon. Down in the description you'll find affiliate links, right, to Book Depository, Amazon. You buy stuff online, I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price. You just go through the link and then buy whatever you want. You don't have to buy the thing I've linked to. So in terms of where we go from here, if you are in the chat right now, please put your feedback in there. Tell me what you think. Ask your questions. Really, remember, this is my speculation, but I feel that history and what's going on is a really good indication of what's to come. So I'm not basing this on complete fabrication and my imagination or active imagination. I am basing it on some real facts as well. And remember, this is not set in concrete. It's possible that things might fall over. Anything is possible at any time, right? So in the chat, let me know what you think, and I will respond to you in a few minutes or a few seconds as it happens. If you're not part of the live stream, down in the comments section, this is where you get an opportunity to talk about your favorite game and what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I think that honestly, this is a good thing, because do we really want to go back to the good old days when we played Dungeons and Dragons, where we used to hide in our basement? We couldn't talk about our hobby because we'd be ridiculed, teased, hung on a coat hook, or generally just tortured. We had to contend with people thinking that we worshipped Satan and were evil and bad people. We're looking at a new age where you're going to be accepted. And also too, it's a lot of people assumed that Dungeons and Dragons was only for nerds, and that is definitely going to change. It's not going to stay that way. It's going to be pretty much anybody's up for it. And I think that's actually a really good thing. That's my opinion anyway. Okay, so till next time, keep rolling those 20s.